Welcome to the very first episode of Head to Head. The venue is the small but absolutely challenging Lydden Hill circuit, which just so happens to be an absolutely exceptional playground for supercars, and not just any supercars, but two no compromise track specials. So Lydden Hill, it's only 1.4 kilometres in length, and it poses only 4 corners, each one being tricky and technical in its own right. Now, we said this was a head-to-head, so let's get down to business. GTR. 3 letters that for the last 9 years have meant only one thing in the mind of almost every petrol head: the iconic Nissan R35 GTR. And here today, it's in its best suit, the Nismo suit. Now, the GTR, in its initial configuration, spoke to the notion that supercars, the giants of the car industry, can indeed be slayed by something that's a bit more ordinary, or at least more ordinarily priced. It was able to pull the pants down on cars that were literally 20, 30 or even £40,000 more expensive than it was, earning its name as the supercar slayer. Or at least so it was, as times have changed now, and despite the fact that Nissan has tweaked, prodded, fettled and poked with the GTR year on year, the others inevitably have caught up to its performance. Now, on the flip side, the GTR has caught up to them too, well, in price, weighing a whopping £150,000 at base. This is the final incarnation of the GTR. Its 3.8 litre twin-turbo V6 delivers the same 592 horsepower, 600 PS as its 2015 Nismo brother that you'll find over in Assetto Corsa. It's torquey too, featuring a completely reworked turbo lifted from the GT3 spec race car, delivering 481 pounds-foot at 3,200 RPM. 3,200 RPM. It's actually quite a while to wait for the fizz to kick in, particularly when you consider that the GTR tips the scales at a colossal 1,700 kilos. It does, however, have great weight distribution, 55 at the front, 45 to the rear, but surprisingly it's only 30 kilograms lighter than the stock car, effectively about the same weight that you check into your suitcase for a 2-week holiday. Now, all of this together means that despite all of the weight, the Nissan has a power to weight ratio of 333 brake horsepower per tonne, which is a lot, all delivered by a very well evolved 4-wheel drive system. 0 to 60 is a blink and you'll miss it affair, over in 2.9 seconds, with a top speed of 196 miles per hour, even with that monster rear wing. Now, speaking of aero, this is where this car begins to separate itself from the base spec GTR, delivering over 100 kilograms of extra downforce. Braking. This car hauls to a stop from 60 miles an hour in 104 feet, which is impressive considering the strange option from Nissan not to ship this car with carbon ceramic brakes by default. Also on the missing list are R compound tyres, and only time will tell how detrimental a product decision that was. And more so, as now there's a new kid in town, claiming to own the same 3 letters, claiming to be the definitive GTR. This is the 2017 Mercedes AMG GT-R. Now, this car, known as the Beast of the Green Hell, is not quite so fresh-faced as it appears on paper, with its core underpinnings coming directly from the SLS. The revisions, however, are very, very substantial. The chassis has been shortened by 250mm, but effectively widened by 46mm at the front and 57 at the rear. It features coilover suspension, closer gear ratios, a carbon prop shaft, vastly bigger feet, 325/30 ZR20s are tucked under those arches. And for the first time, Mercedes implemented rear-wheel steering and a unique 9-way adjustable traction control system. The weight savings and improvements don't stop there, with carbon ceramic brakes tucked inside of those forged aluminium wheels. Under the hood breathes a 4-litre twin turbocharged V8 power unit, delivering 577 horsepower with 516 pounds-foot of torque delivered at an insanely early 1900 RPM. I mean, that's practically idle. It's hot V configured, so those turbos are buried in the block to eliminate as much turbo lag as possible. Now interestingly, Mercedes were keen to classify this car outside of the normal front engine rear wheel drive category and call it a front midship, as a great deal of work was put into making sure that that power plant sits as far back behind the front axles as possible. The work's paid off. It boasts a beautiful near 50-50 weight distribution. It's actually precisely 48-52. Downforce is improved while keeping drag at bay, featuring a double rear diffuser, deployable active front splitter and that evocative rear wing. This is a very, very serious piece of kit. 0 to 60 is headed off in 3.5 seconds, that's 6/10 behind the Nissan, but due to it rather appropriately being equipped with carbon ceramics, it stops from 60 in 96 feet, almost 10 feet short of the Nissan. This weighs in very similarly at around about 150,000, making it exceptionally well placed to take on the lofty Nissan. But don't think that this Mercedes isn't without its foibles as well. It's began to build a reputation for being particularly difficult to put all of its power to effect. Another thing is the spec. You see, the spec of this AMG GTR's paintwork is called Solar Beam Yellow, and you'll probably struggle to see many of these in this colour. Not because it was launched in the famous Green Hell Magma, but because this paintwork costs a staggering £10,000 extra on top. On the one hand, the idea of comparing these two seems a touch unfair. The age gap between them precedes them both, and it makes the whole thing feel a bit asinine. But on closer inspection, these cars have more in common than they do in difference, and that's outside of sharing the same name. They both have V configurations, they're both turbocharged, they're both front engine. This is much of a test of four-wheel drive versus rear-wheel drive, as it is GTR versus GTR, or Mercedes versus Nissan. Now, before answering the big question, which of these two is actually the fastest, it would be advisable, especially in a head-to-head, to get some impressions. And what better way than inviting the Schwud back on the track for some cat and mouse action? See which car gets the jump on the other in wheel-to-wheel action. First up, the Nissan. We'll run a couple of laps and we'll see how things compare when we jump in the AMG. Contrary to popular belief, and despite all of the technology that's crammed into these Nissans, they absolutely do not drive themselves, as you can see here. This car has a real eager front end, and the traction out of low speed turns is literally staggering. The R35 is still something to behold on track. It's a blend of excitement, balance, and ultimately usability. On first acquaintance, this AMG feels smaller, lighter and way angrier than the Nissan. It's wild at the rear, but eventually it does begin to show that 50-50 balance. It's fun, but it doesn't give or have the confidence that that old school Nissan does. Now this is a head-to-head, so we've got to have some parameters to make this fair. We've got OEM setups on the tuning menu to make sure that the cars represent the stock configurations. All of the assists are off to reveal the true nature of these animals. 20 litres of fuel, same tyres, and 5 laps to get the job done. So now that leaves the perennial question. Which one of these GTRs is the king? Given the cat and mouse drives, which ones do you think will set the fastest lap? Well, as they say on Motor Trend, there's only one way to find out. Let's roll the fastest laps. The AMG comprehensively puts the Nissan to bed. Faster lap times will definitely be able to be accomplished by both of these cars. A 5-lap squeeze serves to evidence what a car will deliver to you right out of the box, before you learn all of its ways, in a way that most people will probably never get the time to. So it would seem there's a new GTR in town, and AMG is its name. Oh, just one more thing. For those of you who do watch Motor Trend, you'll know that Johnny and Randy ran both of these cars at Laguna Seca, with the outcome being that the AMG completely demolished the Nissan by 2 seconds around that lap. The thing is, they were the same cars on the same track on the same day with the same driver, which is great. but they had different tyres, which deflated things for me. I know, which deflated the overall results for me. So I ran the cars again, same cars, on the same track, on the same day with the same driver, but this time, the same R-Spec tyres. This is what happened. When the numbers fade, you're left with just the experience, and whilst the AMG wins the performance game comprehensively at that, I think the Nissan still gets to leave with its head held pretty high. Hopefully you've enjoyed this head-to-head as much as I've enjoyed running the cars and making this video. If you were to take two cars out of Project Cars 2 and pitch them head-to-head, which ones would you choose? I'll see you down in the comments.